Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel, Improve Your Mind Motivation. Let's start. Boundaries are not walls, they are the lines that define who we are, what we value, and how we choose to live our lives. They are acts of clarity and self-respect, not of hostility or isolation. A wise woman understands that boundaries are essential for maintaining her integrity and well-being, and she exercises this understanding by quietly stepping away from people who refuse to honor those boundaries. At the heart of every boundary lies a single truth we teach people how to treat us. When we allow others to repeatedly cross lines that we've drawn, we send a message intentionally or not that our needs, feelings, and values are negotiable. A wise woman recognizes that this is not just a matter of communication, but a matter of self-worth. Setting boundaries begins with the belief that you are worthy of love, respect, and kindness, not because of what you do or what you give, but because of who you are. This is not an easy lesson. In a world that often conflates selflessness with goodness, it can feel uncomfortable to say, this is where I end and you begin. It can feel selfish, even unkind, to assert your needs, particularly if you spent much of your life prioritizing the happiness and comfort of others. But the truth is, boundaries are not about pushing others away. They are about drawing closer to yourself. They are about standing firm in the belief that you deserve relationships built on mutual respect and care. And sometimes that means silently cutting ties with people who cannot or will not respect the boundaries you set. One of the most significant aspects of boundaries is understanding that they are not about controlling others, they are about controlling yourself. A boundary says, this is what I will accept, and this is what I won't. It is not a demand for someone else to change their behavior, it is a decision about how you will respond if they don't. For instance, if someone in your life constantly dismisses your feelings or opinions, a boundary might sound like this: I need to feel heard and respected in my relationships. If that doesn't happen, I will have to step back. Notice that the focus is not on making them behave differently, but on what you will do to protect your emotional health. This subtle shift in perspective is liberating because it reminds you that your power lies in your choices, not in trying to control others. But what happens when those boundaries are met with resistance? What happens when someone refuses to honor them or manipulates you into thinking that your boundaries are unreasonable? This is where the quiet strength of a wise woman comes into play. Instead of engaging in endless debates or trying to convince others of the validity of her needs, she takes a different approach. She lets her actions speak. She silently distances herself from those who cannot respect her boundaries, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. Walking away quietly is not a passive act. It is an act of profound courage. It requires you to accept that some people will never change, no matter how much you care for them or how clearly you communicate your needs. It requires you to prioritize your peace over the discomfort of cutting ties. And it requires you to trust that letting go is not the same as giving up. It is instead an act of choosing yourself. For a wise woman, boundaries are not negotiable and they are not situational. She doesn't reserve them only for strangers or acquaintances. She applies them consistently, even with the people closest to her. In fact, the most challenging boundaries to set are often with family members or longtime friends because the emotional stakes feel higher. But these are also the most important boundaries to hold firm. Why? Because the people who are closest to you have the most significant impact on your mental and emotional well-being. If they repeatedly cross your boundaries, they are not just hurting you, they are undermining the foundation of trust and respect that healthy relationships require. Setting boundaries with grace and silence also challenges a deeply ingrained fear that many of us carry, the fear of being seen as unkind or unloving. We worry that saying no will make us look selfish or that walking away will make us seem cold. But here's the truth: setting boundaries is one of the most loving things you can do, not just for yourself, but for others. It creates clarity in relationships, ensuring that everyone involved knows where they stand. And for those who cannot respect your boundaries, it is a way of gently but firmly signaling that their behavior is not acceptable. A wise woman knows that boundaries are not about rejecting people, they are about rejecting behavior. She doesn't cut ties because she doesn't care. She cuts ties because she cares deeply about herself, her values, and the life she's building. She knows that she cannot pour from an empty cup, and she refuses to allow others to drain her energy or erode her sense of self. Ultimately, boundaries are a declaration of self-respect, a commitment to your own peace and well-being. They are a way of saying, I choose to be in relationships that honor who I am, and for the wise woman, that choice is non-negotiable. Every interaction we have carries an energy exchange. Some people fill us with light, possibility, and joy. They are the energy givers. Others seem to siphon away our vitality, leaving us feeling depleted, anxious, or even resentful. They are the energy drainers. A wise woman understands that her energy is one of her most precious resources, and she learns to discern who contributes to her well-being and who consistently takes from it without giving anything back. Energy drainers often come in subtle forms. They may not always be openly toxic or malicious, but their presence has a way of eroding your spirit. They are the people who dominate conversations, leaving little room for others to speak or feel seen. They are the ones who constantly complain without ever seeking solutions, pulling you into their negativity and making you feel responsible for fixing their problems. They might also be the individuals who never celebrate your successes, instead downplaying your achievements or shifting the focus back to themselves. In their wake, they leave you emotionally drained, questioning your worth or doubting your joy. The effect of energy drainers is not just emotional, it is physical too. Have you ever noticed how exhausted you feel after spending time with certain people, even if the interaction was short? That's because our emotional energy is deeply tied to our physical well-being. When someone constantly drains your energy, they're not just taking your attention or patience, they're depleting your overall capacity to show up fully in your life. A wise woman pays attention to these signals. She notices when she feels heavy, tired, or unmotivated after certain interactions, and she honors those feelings as valid data about the relationships in her life. On the other hand, energy givers have a fundamentally different presence. These are the people who light up the room just by walking into it. They listen with genuine curiosity and respond with empathy. They celebrate your wins as if they were their own and stand by you during your struggles without expecting anything in return. Energy givers inspire you to be your best self, not by demanding it, but by modeling it. Their presence is uplifting, and instead of leaving you drained, they leave you energized and hopeful. It's important to note that energy givers are not perfect, nor are they always cheerful or problem-free. Being an energy giver doesn't mean someone never has bad days or needs support. The difference lies in the balance of the relationship. Energy givers contribute more than they take, and they nurture reciprocity in their connections. Even during tough times, their approach to relationships is one of mutual respect and care. They understand that energy flows both ways, and they value the give and take that makes a relationship healthy. A wise woman learns to identify the people in her life who embody these contrasting dynamics. She doesn't label them as good or bad people. She recognizes that everyone has their own challenges and patterns. But she also understands that not every person is meant to stay in her life, especially if their presence consistently drains her energy. This is not an act of judgment, it's an act of self-preservation. A wise woman knows that she cannot thrive if she surrounds herself with people who constantly pull her down. The tricky part is that energy drainers are often not obvious at first. They may enter your life during a time when you are particularly vulnerable, presenting themselves as helpful or supportive. Over time, however, their patterns become clear. They take more than they give, and their presence starts to feel like a burden. Recognizing this dynamic can be difficult, especially if you've developed an emotional attachment to the person or feel a sense of obligation to them. But awareness is the first step toward reclaiming your energy. Once you've identified the energy drainers in your life, the next step is to decide how to handle those relationships. This doesn't always mean cutting ties completely. In some cases, it may mean setting firmer boundaries. For example, you might choose to limit the amount of time you spend with someone or the types of conversations you have with them. You might decide to stop offering advice to a friend who never takes it, or stop engaging in arguments with a family member who thrives on conflict. The key is to protect your energy without feeling the need to explain or justify your boundaries. When it comes to energy givers, the opposite approach applies. Nurture those relationships. These are the people who remind you of your worth and help you see the beauty in life, even during difficult times. They are the friends who check in on you, the colleagues who celebrate your ideas, and the loved ones who offer their support unconditionally. A wise woman prioritizes these relationships, knowing that they are not just beneficial, they are essential to her growth and happiness. It's also worth considering that energy is not just about relationships with others, it's about the relationship you have with yourself. Sometimes the most significant energy drainer in your life is your own inner critic, that voice that tells you you're not good enough or that you need to do more to be worthy. Similarly, the greatest energy giver can be your inner champion, the part of you that believes in your potential and encourages you to pursue your dreams. A wise woman learns to cultivate her inner energy giver, quieting the critic and choosing self-compassion over self-judgment. Ultimately, the distinction between energy drainers and energy givers is not just about identifying others, it's about identifying what kind of energy you want in your life. By making conscious choices about who you surround yourself with and how you protect your energy, you create space for joy, growth, and connection. Silence is often misunderstood. It is perceived as passive, weak, or even cowardly in a world that celebrates constant communication and assertiveness. But silence, when intentional and purposeful, is one of the most courageous acts a person can undertake. A wise woman understands the power of silence not as a retreat, but as a form of strength, resilience, and self-control. It is a choice, an act of clarity, and a demonstration of inner power that speaks louder than words ever could. Courageous silence begins with the realization that not every battle is worth fighting and not every word needs to be said. In a culture that values having the last word or winning an argument, it takes extraordinary courage to walk away without explaining yourself. Silence is not an admission of defeat. It is a declaration that your peace is more valuable than engaging in pointless conflict. A wise woman knows that there is strength in restraint, that sometimes the loudest statement you can make is the one you do not utter. One of the most challenging aspects of courageous silence is learning to embrace it in the face of provocation. There will always be people who seek to draw you into their chaos, those who poke at your vulnerabilities, test your boundaries, or bait you into reaction. It's tempting to respond, to defend yourself, to prove your point. But silence in these moments is not about surrendering, it is about choosing where to invest your energy. When you remain silent in the face of unnecessary conflict, you are saying, I refuse to participate in this dynamic. My well-being is not up for negotiation. Courageous silence is also about knowing when words will not serve the situation. Some truths, no matter how well articulated, will fall on deaf ears. Some explanations, no matter how logical, will not change another person's mind. A wise woman understands this and saves her voice for the moments that truly matter. She does not waste her breath trying to convince someone who is committed to misunderstanding her. Instead, she lets her actions, her boundaries, and her choices do the talking. Silence, in these cases, is not avoided as a boundary. There is also an element of grace in courageous silence. It is not about withholding communication out of spite or creating a power dynamic. Instead, it is about stepping back with dignity, allowing space for reflection and clarity. Silence can diffuse tension, giving both parties the time they need to process their emotions and thoughts. It is a way of saying, I value this relationship enough to pause, to not escalate, and to allow healing or understanding to emerge. Courageous silence is especially powerful in moments of injustice or disrespect. It may seem counterintuitive, shouldn't we always speak out against unfairness? But a wise woman knows that silence, when wielded intentionally, can be a form of resistance. When someone insults or belittles her, she does not lower herself to their level by responding in kind. Instead, she lets the weight of her silence underline the pettiness of their behavior. Her lack of reaction is not an absence, it is a statement, your words do not define me. And I will not engage in this silence, in this context, is a shield, a way of maintaining dignity in the face of disrespect. There is a profound emotional discipline required to practice courageous silence. It demands self-awareness, emotional intelligence, and an ability to tolerate discomfort. When you choose silence, you are often sitting with your own unspoken emotions, anger, hurt, frustration, or sadness. It takes strength to resist the urge to externalize these feelings, to hurl them at someone else in the heat of the moment. A wise woman knows that her emotions are valid, but she also knows that she is responsible for how she expresses them. She uses silence as a tool for processing, for gaining perspective, and for choosing a response that aligns with her values rather than her impulses. Courageous silence is not just about interactions with others, it is also about the relationship you have with yourself. It is the ability to quiet the noise of your inner critic, to pause and listen to your intuition, to give yourself the space to reflect without judgment. In a world that bombards us with distractions and demands for instant answers, silence can be a sanctuary. It is where clarity is born, where you can hear the voice of your authentic self beneath the clamor of external expectations. A wise woman treasures this silence, knowing that it is essential for growth and self-discovery. Silence can also be a form of respect for yourself, for others, and for the complexity of certain situations. Not every problem has an immediate solution, and not every conflict requires a resolution in the moment. And sometimes, silence is an acknowledgement that words cannot fully capture what you feel or what the situation demands. It is a way of holding space for yourself and for others, allowing emotions to settle and truths to emerge in their own time. To be silent in a world that prizes constant noise is a radical act. It requires confidence in your own worth, a belief that your value is not tied to how much you say or how loudly you say it. It requires a willingness to let go of the need for approval or validation from others. A wise woman practices courageous silence, not because she has nothing to say, but because she knows when saying nothing is the most powerful choice she can make. For much of our lives, we are taught to put the needs of others first, to be kind, agreeable, and helpful, and to avoid conflict at all costs. This can feel like the right thing to do, especially when we are trying to maintain relationships or win approval. We convince ourselves that by constantly pleasing others, we will be liked, accepted, and valued. But what happens when we lose sight of our own needs, our own desires, and our own values in the process? What happens when people-pleasing takes the place of self-respect? Self-respect is the foundation of any healthy, authentic life. It means valuing yourself for who you are, not for what you do or how others perceive you. It's about setting boundaries that honor your well-being, making choices that align with your values, and being unapologetic about your needs. Self-respect is not about arrogance or self-centeredness. It's about understanding that you deserve the same level of care, consideration, and respect that you offer to others. When you practice self-respect, you are sending a message to the world: I am worthy of love, kindness, and honesty just as much as anyone else. On the other hand, people-pleasing often comes from a place of insecurity. It stems from the desire to be liked or accepted by others, sometimes at the expense of your own mental, emotional, or physical health. People-pleasers often put the needs of others before their own, fearing rejection or criticism if they say no, speak their truth, or express a differing opinion. They may agree to things they don't want to do, suppress their feelings to avoid conflict, and sacrifice their own happiness in an attempt to make others happy. The danger in people-pleasing lies in the fact that it is a never-ending cycle. No matter how much you do for others, no matter how much you give, it never feels like enough. People-pleasers often feel a deep sense of emptiness because they are giving so much of themselves while receiving little in return. Over time, this imbalance can lead to resentment, burnout, and a loss of self-identity. When you constantly prioritize others over yourself, you can lose touch with who you truly are and what you truly want. In the end, people-pleasing doesn't foster healthy relationships. It fosters dependence, codependency, and a lack of mutual respect. A wise woman recognizes that her worth is not determined by how much she does for others or how well she fulfills their expectations. She understands that the healthiest relationships are built on mutual respect and understanding, where both parties honor each other's boundaries, needs, and desires. She knows that when she sacrifices her own well-being for the sake of others, she is not truly giving, she is depleting herself. And by doing so, she ultimately shortchanges both herself and the other person, because genuine connection is based on authenticity, not obligation. The first step in choosing self-respect over people-pleasing is recognizing the pattern. It requires deep self-awareness to acknowledge when you are making choices out of fear, guilt, or the need for approval rather than out of genuine desire. Are you agreeing to something because you truly want to help or because you are afraid of saying no? Are you suppressing your opinions or emotions to keep the peace, even if it means betraying your own values? Recognizing these moments is critical because it is only by becoming aware of these patterns that you can begin to change them. Once you recognize that you are falling into people-pleasing behaviors, the next step is to establish boundaries. Boundaries are an act of self-respect. They are the lines you draw to protect your time, your energy, and your emotional health. A wise woman knows that setting boundaries is not an act of selfishness, it is an act of self-preservation. She understands that saying no is not an indictment of the other person, but a statement of her own worth. She also knows that saying yes to things that don't align with her values or desires is a betrayal of herself. Boundaries help her maintain her integrity and ensure that her relationships are built on mutual respect. Setting boundaries can be uncomfortable at first. People pleasers often fear disappointing others or facing conflict when they assert their needs. But a wise woman knows that the discomfort is temporary and the benefits are long-lasting. She also knows that while some people may be disappointed or upset when she says no, that is not a reflection of her worth. It is simply a sign that she is honoring herself, and that is always worth the discomfort. Another key aspect of self-respect is the ability to say no without guilt. People pleasers often experience immense guilt when they say no because they fear that they will be perceived as unkind, selfish, or unhelpful. But saying no is a form of self-care. It is a way of protecting your time, energy, and mental health. A wise woman knows that she cannot pour from an empty cup, and that by saying no when needed, she is ensuring that she has the resources to say yes to the things that truly matter to her. The shift from people-pleasing to self-respect also involves learning to trust your intuition. A wise woman does not need to seek external validation for every decision she makes. She knows that she is the expert on her own life, and she trusts herself to make the choices that are right for her. She does not need to seek constant approval from others because she understands that her value is not determined by anyone else's opinion. Ultimately, choosing self-respect over people-pleasing is about reclaiming your authenticity. It is about living a life that is true to who you are, not who you think others want you to be. A wise woman embraces her imperfections, her desires, and her needs, knowing that they are what make her unique and worthy of love. She values herself enough to make choices that align with her deepest truths, even when it means disappointing others or stepping out of her comfort zone. By choosing self-respect, she creates space for authentic connections and meaningful relationships grounded in mutual care, understanding, and respect. Letting go is one of the most challenging and liberating acts we can undertake. It requires deep emotional resilience, self-awareness, and trust in the process of life. Whether it's letting go of past hurts, outdated beliefs, relationships that no longer serve us, or even our own limiting self-concepts, the act of release is not about weakness, it is about strength, growth, and self-love. It is a gift we give ourselves when we choose to release what no longer supports us, opening space for new opportunities, healing, and transformation. At the heart of letting go is the recognition that holding on to something that has outlived its purpose only holds us back. We cling to things, whether they are emotions, memories, or relationships, because they are familiar. They become a part of our identity, shaping how we see ourselves in the world around us. Letting go feels threatening because it means stepping into the unknown, releasing what we think we need in order to create room for what is truly meant for us. But this process is not one of loss, it is one of gaining freedom, peace, and the ability to embrace the future with an open heart. One of the first things we must learn when it comes to letting go is that attachment is the root of suffering. We become attached to people, outcomes, and experiences, believing that we need them in order to feel complete, validated, or worthy. These attachments, however, often weigh us down. When we are emotionally attached to something or someone, we place our happiness in their hands, surrendering our power and agency. This leaves us vulnerable to disappointment, pain, and frustration when things don't go as we expect. A wise woman understands that while love and connection are essential, attachment is not. She knows that she is worthy of love and fulfillment on her own, and she chooses to let go of what binds her to unhealthy patterns or relationships. Letting go can also be difficult because it often involves releasing control. We want to hold on to situations, people, or expectations because we believe we can control the outcome. But life by its very nature is unpredictable and control is an illusion. When we hold on too tightly to outcomes, we create resistance, which only increases our stress and anxiety. The act of letting go is not about passivity, it is about surrendering to the flow of life. It is a conscious decision to trust that things will unfold as they are meant to, even if we cannot predict or understand the reasons why. A wise woman knows that life is not meant to be controlled but experienced, and letting go is an essential part of her ability to live freely and fully. Another aspect of letting go is recognizing that forgiveness is a necessary component of release. We often hold on to grudges, past mistakes, or unresolved conflicts because we believe that forgiveness means condoning harmful behavior or forgetting the past. But in reality, forgiveness is not about excusing anyone's actions. It is about freeing ourselves from the emotional burden that holds us captive. By choosing to forgive, we stop carrying the weight of resentment, anger, or guilt. We let go of the negative energy that attaches itself to those unresolved emotions and reclaim our peace. Letting go of the past does not mean we forget what happened. It means we stop allowing it to define who we are or how we move forward. The process of letting go is deeply intertwined with the idea of personal growth. Sometimes letting go means releasing a version of ourselves that no longer serves us. As we grow, our values, priorities, and desires evolve, and we may outgrow certain identities or ways of thinking that once felt comforting or familiar. This is particularly true when it comes to letting go of old beliefs about who we are or what we are capable of. We may hold on to limiting beliefs that tell us we are not good enough, worthy enough, or capable enough of creating the life we want. Letting go of these beliefs is an act of self-liberation. It is the process of freeing ourselves from the constraints we've placed on our own potential. A wise woman knows that she is always evolving, and part of her evolution involves shedding old skins to reveal the truest, most authentic version of herself. Letting go can also mean walking away from relationships that no longer nurture or support us. Relationships, whether with family, friends, or romantic partners, can be some of the most difficult things to let go of. We fear loneliness, loss, and the uncertainty that comes with change. But a wise woman understands that some relationships are not meant to last forever. She recognizes that true love and connection are built on mutual respect, trust, and understanding. And when these elements are no longer present, it is time to release them. Letting go of unhealthy relationships allows space for new connections, relationships that are aligned with her highest values and aspirations. She chooses to surround herself with people who uplift, support, and inspire her, knowing that this is essential to her own well-being. One of the most profound forms of letting go is letting go of the need for external validation. For much of our lives, we seek approval and acceptance from others. We base our worth on the opinions of our parents, peers, partners, or society at large. But the truth is, no amount of external validation will ever fill the void we feel inside if we do not first validate ourselves. A wise woman knows that her worth is inherent, not dependent on how others see her or what they think of her. She learns to embrace her own voice, her own desires, and her own sense of purpose without needing approval from the outside world. Letting go of the need for validation is an act of reclaiming her personal power. It is a choice to live authentically without compromise or fear of judgment. The gift of letting go is one of the most transformative acts we can engage in. It is a process of surrendering the past, releasing attachments, and embracing the unknown with trust and grace. When we let go, we make room for growth, healing, and new opportunities. It is a journey that requires patience, courage, and a deep faith in ourselves in the process of life. But as we learn to let go, we discover that we are not losing anything. We are simply making space for all that is meant to flow into our lives.